Hey everybody, Arnaldo here, broadcasting from Fidelios Frequency. Welcome to my channel, and welcome to the fourth episode of The Sun Shines Out of Our Behinds. And today we will be celebrating the 40th anniversary and taking a closer look at the third single by the Smiths called What Difference Does It Make? We'll take a deep dive right after the intro. As for other releases that I've talked about and featured in other videos of my Smith series, there seems to be a little bit of uncertainty or confusion with regards to the release date for What Difference Does It Make? And last week on January 9th, Morrissey made a post on his website celebrating the 40th anniversary of the release of the third single, therefore marking January 9th, 1984 as the original release date. However, I did some research and on Wikipedia as well as a few other fan websites, Smith's fans websites, the release date is actually listed as January 16th, which makes today the 40th anniversary since its release. What difference does it make, right? Whether it was the 9th or the 16th, here we are to celebrate What Difference Does It Make? The third single by the Smiths. And let's talk a little bit about it. It actually was an older song, one of the earlier songs that Morrissey and Marr wrote together. Before the first single, Hand in Glove, before the second single, This Charming Man, there was What Difference Does It Make? Which was never released, or at least intended to be released as a single. Probably for a couple of reasons. First, because maybe they never felt they had recorded it to their satisfaction. And also because Hand in Glove and This Charming Man are probably superior songs to What Difference Does It Make? But that's debatable. I personally love What Difference Does It Make? I'll get more into the details about which version I prefer over the other. But as I said, they attempted to record the song a couple of times before. First, for an EMI demo, they hadn't signed yet to Rough Trade. And after they got signed to Rough Trade, they attempted to record it with Troy Tate, who was drafted in to produce the sessions for what would become the debut album, the first album by the Smiths. Unsuccessful in doing so because a lot of the sessions, most of the sessions were scrapped. They didn't meet neither the Smiths nor label head Jeff Travis's standards. Therefore, they felt they didn't capture the group at their best, and also were not really well recorded to begin with. They enlisted another producer, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Third attempt in recording the song was in May of 1983 when the Smiths were invited to appear on the John Peel Show, and they were invited to BBC and they performed live. Of course, it was taped and then broadcast subsequently during the show, but live performance captured by Roger Pusey, and who engineered and, let's just say, produced the session. And it yielded a very good version of What Difference Does It Make? Which didn't get released as a single, but was later featured on the late 1984 compilation album, and kind of like a mishmash of either alternate songs and compilation and B-sides, Hatful of Hollow. And totally different version that was released as a single, because John Porter, who had been drafted in to produce the album, actually did a transformation of the song. Original member, not really original, but at one point member of Roxy Music. He played bass on For Your Pleasure. He then became a producer, and John Porter was also an accomplished guitarist. He brought in many guitars into the studio while the Smiths were recording, and actually encouraged Johnny Marr to layer a lot of other guitar overdubs, and that basically transformed the track. But more importantly, John Porter thought that the song needed a little bit more structure and also was not very fond of the drum pattern. Initially, a kind of rumbly drum pattern by Mike Joyce, which is featured on the version on Hatful of Hollow. He suggested a simpler drum pattern or a drum track, more R&B influenced, a little bit more straightforward. And although both Mike Joyce and maybe also Morrissey were a little reluctant to tackle this new arrangement, they went along with the flow, and Jeff Travis, label head of Rough Trade, loved the outcome of those sessions and earmarked it for release as their third single. Well, Morrissey and Marr have commented afterwards that maybe it wasn't their preferred choice. Morrissey actually is quoted years later as saying he regretted it as a single the moment after it was pressed. And Johnny Marr always said he was more fond of the song when it was performed for a live audience, when it was performed live. So, and more importantly, actually, on The Sound of the Smiths, which is a compilation that came out in 2008, Morrissey actually, for What Difference Does It Make, chose the version that was recorded at the BBC, also featured on Hatful of Hollow. And personally, if I would have to choose one version of the song, it would definitely be the version from Hatful of Hollow. And that's just not my feeling, but also many fans prefer this version, as well as critics, and kind of like general consensus is the version on Hatful of Hollow is superior. Now, let's talk a little bit about the inspiration for the song. First of all, the song title. It seems that Morrissey may have borrowed the title from a Jack Kerouac novel from 1958 called Dharma Bums, in which one of the characters is heard saying the phrase, "What difference does it make?" I think in more than one instance of the novel. The themes of the track is a theme that is recurrent throughout Morrissey's career, which is that of an ill-fated relationship, whether it's between two lovers or between two friends, that didn't end well because one of the friends decided to end the relationship, even though the other party was still very much invested in the relationship and was still very fond and maybe also still in love with the other party. And one more curious thing is these two versions actually have one lyric that is slightly different, which alter the meaning quite significantly. In the earlier version, the lyrics read, "I can surely rely on you." That is the character that was spurned, or the rejected character, says, "I can surely rely on you." And the version that was released on the 12-inch single, as well as the album, the verse goes, "I think I can rely on you." So subtle difference, but probably changes a little bit the meaning of the verse and of the song. And now let's talk a little bit about the artwork. When it came out, the 12-inch single featured this artwork, and the single also featured pretty much the same, with the exception of the name of the band on it. This is Terence Stamp, and the frame is from a scene in the movie The Collector, where he's holding a chloroform pad. Even though Morrissey was told by Rough Trade art department, I guess, that the photograph had been cleared with permission from Terence Stamp, it actually wasn't the case, because as soon as it hit the shelves, Terence Stamp was very vocal about not giving permission for the use of his image. Therefore, Rough Trade had to scramble and come up with a new artwork for, first of all, they withdrew all the copies, whatever was left, and scrapped the remaining stock and came up with this as the new cover, where you see Morrissey reenacting the scene with Terence Stamp, this time holding a glass of milk instead of the chloroform pad. And the artwork was changed, of course, not only for the 12-inch, but also for the 7-inch. Until shortly after. So during that time being, for those months during which this was maybe still in production and on the shelves, this version became highly sought after because it was the withdrawn version. Until Terence Stamp agreed to the use of his image, and happily Morrissey and Rough Trade reinstated the picture of Terence Stamp, but this time changed the artwork slightly to include the name of the band in the upper left corner, as you could see, slightly different from the original. So that's a little bit about the artwork. One more thing I've touched upon in the previous single versions that I talked about in other videos about the runout groove, the messages that Morrissey would have engraved in the runout grooves of the 12 inches and of the singles, almost like these little hidden messages. Sometimes they were lines from the lyrics. In this case, and I believe this is the only case, I can go do some further research, but it seems to me that there is no etching here. There is no hidden message in the runout groove, probably very unique. In none of these versions, there's a runout groove. So that's another piece of trivial information. So what else can we say about it? Yes, I'd like to just touch upon briefly about the two B-sides of the 12-inch single. We have Back to the Old House and These Things Take Time. I'll be honest with you, these things take time only featured on the 12-inch B-side, not one of my favorite tracks. However, Back to the Old House, stellar track. The version that's included on the 12-inch is a re-recorded version with the entire band. Very melancholic song, almost reminiscing about an old love and the reluctancy to return to almost, not maybe the scene of the crime, but the old hauntings of of where those memories of a past relationship happened. Hence, I will never go back to the old house. And the best version, again, is not the version on here, which is the studio version with the full band, Andy Rourke on bass, Mike Joyce also on drums. Once again, the best version is on Hatful of Hollow, completely acoustic version. Only Johnny Marr on acoustic guitar, beautiful finger picking, reminiscent of Bert Jansch actually, and Morrissey singing. Amazing take on Hatful of Hollow of Back to the Old House, up there, one of my favorite songs by the Smiths. So, what can we conclude with? I guess we'll conclude with there you go. Let's do Morrissey's take. Now he kind of actually denounces milk. Of course, he's vegan, animal rights activist. Lately, I read a post about Morrissey considering also milk banned on his list of food. So let's close with Morrissey as Terence Stamp, reenacting Terence Stamp on what difference does it make. And I guess that wraps it up for the 4th episode of The Sun Shines Out of Our Behinds. And hopefully there will be another episode coming up very soon. We'll be celebrating the 40th anniversary of the release of the debut album. But until then, thank you very much for watching the 4th episode. Thank you very much for tuning in to Fidelio's Frequency. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so, and let me know your thoughts about the Smiths, about what difference does it make, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again.